Of having been to the gorgeous city of Denver a few times myself. All of us have been there. And we have just been beyond flummoxed to learn over these last few years that there is apparently only one baker in such a large metropolitan area. And we are pleased to have him join us now. The name of the book, The Cost of My Faith: How a Decision in My Cake Shop Took Me to the Supreme Court. Jack Phillips joins us along with Ryan Dengar over at Alliance Defending Freedom. Jack, it's a pleasure to have you with us, as well as Ryan. Thank you for joining us, Jack. How are you?
I'm just fine. Thanks for having me.
So Jack, let me just start there. This is a question, frankly, I've wanted to ask you for years. How is it possible you are the only cake baker in the entire greater Denver metropolitan area? There was nowhere else anyone could go to have a particular message that they wanted on a cake. Why are you the only option? Has the city of Denver thought about maybe encouraging other cake shops to open?
No, actually, in our Supreme Court briefs, there were 67 bakers who advertise in gay-friendly magazines. And the city, county, state of Denver, state of Colorado just chose to attack me because of my beliefs.
Let's start with the most obvious question then. Why not just bake the cake? Why do what you did?
Well, before my wife and I opened the shop, in the years, months preceding that, designing it and deciding what kind of a bakery it would be, we decided there would be certain cakes that we couldn't create because of the messages that they would express. Among those would be cakes that celebrated Halloween, or cakes that would be anti-American, or that would have racist statements involved, or cakes that would disparage or denigrate other people, including people who identify as LGBT. We also decided that we wouldn't create cakes for same-sex weddings, though back in 1993, that wasn't really on anybody's radar, and it was against the law in Colorado.
So you've been in business since 1993?
Yeah, almost 20 years.
Okay. Which means you have some form of a successful clientele.
Yeah.
You're somewhat known in your industry.
We were well known, especially for our wedding cakes at that point. Yeah.
Does that imply maybe that you were specifically targeted?
I don't know that I was targeted, but I know that the state came after me because of my religious beliefs, and the message that I declined to express didn't coincide with the message they wanted expressed.
Can you walk us through the day that this original event, because you're undergoing another challenge now as we speak, correct?
Right. We're in our third lawsuit. We were just in court at the end of March, and we're now awaiting the judge's decision on that one, which could come any day or in July. There's not a timeline. We were open on, it was July the 12th or July the 19th, 2012. And two men came into our store, and I sat down and talked with them, and they indicated that they wanted a wedding cake, and it was for their wedding. And so I knew that was a line in the sand that I couldn't cross, and just how was I going to reply to that? So as gently and graciously as I could, I said, sorry guys, I don't create cakes for same-sex weddings. And they looked at me blankly like, what did you just say? I said, I'll make you cookies, brownies, other custom cakes, but I just can't create a cake for a same-sex wedding. And the two men, one of them jumped up, flipped me off, swore at me, and stormed out the door. And the other one left the other door after his mom was there. He gathered her up, and they went out. 20 minutes later, the phone started ringing with hateful phone calls, threatening phone calls. And that was unabated for the next few weeks, actually.
So you drew a very clear distinction with them. You said, hey, it has nothing to do, regardless of how you want to identify, I will serve you as a customer. But when you demand a specific service from me that violates how I identify, I'm not going to use my own intellectual property and talents and gifts to do so. You made that very clear to them at that moment, that was the distinction.
Yeah, I tried to. Our conversation was only about 20 seconds long, but I tried to indicate that I would create other custom cakes for them, sell them anything in my shop, treat them as well as I treat anybody else, equally to any other customer. But they're asking for a cake that has a message that I couldn't express. And the state, that's what they came after me for.
Jack, what's this ordeal been like for you and your family on a personal level going on 9 years now?
You know, getting the death threats and all those things, those are difficult. But then going back to this most recent trial in March and the deposition that was held before that, and most people don't know what a deposition actually is, but it's the opposing attorney having up to 6 hours to just cross-examine you basically and try and trap you in your words and twist your words and make you say something that you didn't intend to or whatever. And having to watch my wife go through that was incredibly hard because I had to just sit there with my hands folded on the table in front of me so that I couldn't be signaling her or anything. And then to go through the trial and watch the same thing where they cross-examined, where they examined my wife, made her testify, and my daughter. And then going back to the death threats, there was one that came in. My daughter was in the shop and it frightened me. So I told her, you know, Lisa, I just got this call. This man's got a gun. He's coming to the shop. He's going to blow my head off. I'm going to go, you know, call the police. You go in the back and wait until this is all straightened out. The police came and the man kept calling and we weren't able to trace it. But that changed, the whole scene in our cake shop. We now have security cameras and those kind of things because it was a terrific ordeal. Besides the fact that the Colorado Civil Rights Commission ruled that from now on, if I make wedding cakes, I have to create them for everybody who comes in, same-sex couples or whatever, and I wouldn't even be able to have a say in what that design would be, meaning that if they wanted an adult-themed cake or a pornographic cake for their wedding, I could not tell them no, I would have to create that. So we had to decide whether we continued with our wedding business, which was a huge part of our business at that time, or set it aside. And the choice was obvious. You know, we have to give up our wedding business at this point.
What's been your support system beyond your family?
My faith, obviously, you know, my faith in Jesus Christ, my relationship to him has been the strongest part. My family has gotten stronger and, you know, closer together through all of this. And then you have the support, incredible support of Alliance Defending Freedom, who defend their clients pro bono, meaning for free. They've never charged me a dime for anything that they've done over the last 8.5 years. And they run on donations. So if anybody has extra money, I'd say, you know, donate to them. That's a great cause because you're not just fighting for me, because I learned a long time ago that this isn't about Jack making cakes again. This is about every American's right to live and work freely according to their conscience without fear of punishment from the government. And ADF has helped defend that. Not just for me, but so many other clients, and we're just so grateful for that.
Ryan, I want to go back to the Supreme Court win. When I read that opinion, now I'm not an attorney, but I have read a lot of opinions from the Supreme Court over the years and analyzed them on my show. It appeared that the Supreme Court gave you a win from a very, very narrow perspective, meaning that the intent and original schema of the Constitution wasn't actually honored, as much as they sort of found the way that they were persecuting poor Jack here to be icky. That they basically said, if you could come up with another rationale other than obvious religious animus, I think was the term that they used. If you come up with another rationale other than obvious religious animus, then by all means, I mean, put the boot to the throat if you would like. I mean, Jack's a ward of the state. Am I exaggerating that at all? Because it kind of seems like it's set the stage for the next two events that poor Jack here's had to undergo.
Yes, Steve. Well, the decision of the court was narrow. There's no question about it, but it was a very important decision. So I would say it was a win, but it was incomplete. And we're witnessing now the incompleteness of that decision, which is the question of whether what Jack is doing. Jack is agreeing and willing to serve everyone. He serves same-sex couples. He serves same-sex customers. He serves transgender customers. In fact, at the trial we just had, testimony came out that Jack.
Do we lose Ryan? Do we still have Jack? All right.
Yeah.
All right, Jack. Let me bring it back to you.
Yeah. The statement that I think Ron was about to make was just at our most recent trial, a man who testified in my behalf. His name was Mike Jones. He was a former gay activist who was very important, and he testified that I served him, you know, for the number of years. He came in initially. He introduced himself. My name is Mike Jones, and I'm a gay man. Hi, Mike. What can I do for you? And we've become friends since then, and enough so that he went through a deposition and testified on our behalf, because the way that I've always treated him fairly and equally, and as compassionate and graciously as I could, same as any other customer.
What you're proving, Jack, is all of the talk of identity politics in recent years is a scam. That this is really not about identity, about ideology. That it really doesn't matter if you treat everybody the same and love your neighbor as you love yourself, regardless of their behavior or ethnicity or identity or what have you. You must adopt and affirm my ideology. That's really what this is about. It's not about identity at all. It's been about ideology. Well, idolatry too, but it's been about ideology the entire time.
Yeah, when the Civil Rights Commission ruled against us, besides taking away our wedding business, they also told me that I had to re-educate my employees, which included a lot of family members. My daughter works here, my wife and I own it, and my mom works here also at that time, and she was in her 80s, and I was supposed to retrain her and then report to the Civil Rights Commission quarterly for 2 years on my progress on this retraining and re-education program. But fortunately, my mom walked by one day and said, "By the way, I will not be re-educated." So, thank you, Mom, for standing up as well. I love you.
Ryan, we have you back. I want to let you finish the point you were making before about the original Supreme Court decision. Go ahead.
Narrow, and it was incomplete. It was an important victory, but there's more work left to be done. And this case that we're in right now really demonstrates that fact, and that is the question of whether what Jack does, create cakes using artistry that is pure speech, whether Jack can be compelled to use those gifts, talents, and abilities to send messages with which he disagrees, and whether he can be compelled to do that through the power of the state. That's what's at stake here. And that's the question the court needs to consider, is whether or not Jack has a First Amendment right not to speak messages with which he disagrees.
Ryan, do I have a First Amendment right to go to a Muslim cake baker in Dearborn, Michigan and demand they bake a cake that says Muhammad was illiterate? Do I have a right to go to a black cake baker and demand that they bake a cake that says the KKK didn't go far enough? Do I have rights to do things like that, Ryan?
Steve, you're asking the right questions. And those are exactly the things that we as lawyers pose to the courts. And the answer to that is, of course not. Because the First Amendment protects the right of conscience for everyone, regardless of religion and creed. The First Amendment protects your right not to be compelled by the power of the state to speak messages that conflict with your deeply held religious and moral beliefs.
Jack, what are your final thoughts for the audience? I've been warning them the last few years. If you aren't sure you have what it takes to stand in the gap in this against the spirit of the age we're up against, the good news is we're all going to find out. All of us are, because that's what the spirit of the age is looking for. I mean, your life is a testimony to this, is it not, Jack?
Again, this is not just about Jack Phillips and making certain cakes. This is about the right of every American to live and work according to their conscience without fear of punishment from the government. But for us, before we opened the shop, we drew our lines in the sand, and not thinking we'd ever have to fight these battles. But one of the cakes that we decided we wouldn't create would be cakes that celebrated Halloween. So every year, September, October, a number of people call us and ask us to create a cake that we can't create. And we'd have to practice it saying, "I'm sorry, that's a cake we can't create." And so when these bigger issues like the same-sex marriage or the gender transition celebration came up, we were already prepared. And so God was gracious to give us, those opportunities early on to learn how to stand up for our faith and not cross those lines. And everybody will have those lines to cross. You just have to know where they are and if they're worth fighting for. This one is.
Name of the book, The Cost of My Faith, How a Decision in My Cake Shop Took Me to the Supreme Court. Ryan Bangert from ADF, as well as Jack Phillips, the one and only cake baker in Denver, Colorado. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, Jack, for your stand, the example you set, brother. God bless. All right, take care.
Thank you, Steve. It's been a pleasure.